Okay.
Sticks, logs and stuff that the guy was gonna dump, but he was gonna dump it after.
Not a good idea.
I just, I was in a rush.
Well,
I didn't have a badge.
I was just gonna say you didn't. Look.
What's the email? My car hurts.
Sometimes that works. That's good.
Cut down a couple trees today. Landscape.
It's that time of year. It's good to be out. Tomorrow's when it
I
hurts.
say tomorrow. or-
Yeah, tomorrow's when it hurts. I was finding lots of muscles that I forgot I had. Over the winter. So, oh my gosh, I
Found a few over the weekend. Oh, my doc. Yep.
Yep.
Doc and we're going to that.
Family, the funeral dinner.
For a note taker tonight. Roll call. You are?
NIT guy.
Speak softly in the recording. Ooh. All right, wow, we got a new guy working tonight. Call this meeting to order. I'll rise for the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Roll call.
Please.
Nancy Rondell.
Here.
Jamie Milky. Here. Matt Badero.
Yep.
Sean Leo.
Here.
John Cox.
Sure.
We have a
Fantastic. Any citizens comment this evening? Something that's not on the agenda? We've missed you.
Good, I think you guys too. I'm not sure, I didn't see the agenda totally, but STRs. 2 seconds. Did a little research and Petoskey has a total of 34. This is coming up because of your the definition of rules and regulations in the paper. So they have 34, we have 61. They have like 4 times the population that we do. And we have twice the number of rentals licenses. So I'm proposing that instead of having a waiting list as defined in the rules, we just have attrition and let it fall off to something less than 61. Number 2, in the rules and regulations, under definitions, number 3, a natural person is a human being. Really? We have to define what a human being is. Is AI an issue here or what?
So businesses aren't doing it.
Come on. I don't. And then my other suggestion is placards in these rental homes, issued by the city, some color that goes in on the front door or the window so that I, as a resident, know which properties are rentals or not. These people are coming and going and I have no idea. And on the placard, or they're supposed to have on their front doors already, the name of the person responsible and the phone number. But if you look on doors that I know that are rentals, there's no little piece of paper stuck on the door with a name and a phone number. So city issue a placard, you gotta fill it out, stick it on your door, your window, whatever.
Sure, thank you. Anybody else? Sure. Hand up.
No.
Okay, consent agenda. Everyone happy with the consent agenda?
I think it was good.
I was fine with it.
I make a motion to approve.
Second.
I'll do a roll call. Leo,
Yes.
Cups,
Yes.
Rondell,
Yes.
Melky,
Yes.
and Bagara.
Yes.
Motion passes. Now discussion. Okay, we have Andrea Jacobs here from Housing North. She is the program director for Housing Ready. Yeah, the Housing Ready program. And as you know, Andrea has been our, we contribute to the Housing North program, $10,000 last year and this year to do a lot of investigating and making connections with housing issues and stuff. So Andrea will be here to explain. We'll give an update. She hasn't given an update this year, so this will be her update for 2023. And just do a little, probably inform you about the trends and what's happening in the area. So
Ready for me?
I'm ready for you.
Okay. Thanks very much. I am Andrea Jacobs. I'm the Emmett County Housing Ready Program Director for Housing North. And Housing North is a regional nonprofit that covers the 10 northwestern counties of Lower Michigan. And they develop and implement, sort of inform and implement statewide policies and programs. And there's a few really great things in the past year or so that have happened at the Housing North sort of state level. They've recently been named a regional housing partnership for MISHDA's statewide housing policy. We don't quite know what that means yet, but it hopefully means that we are able to sort of help funnel some of the funding and help inform a lot of the programs that are giving us access in our rural communities to that statewide funding. That's still being defined right now, but we were the first region, we were the first regional partnership named for the first region in Michigan. So that was pretty cool. The Housing Michigan Coalition last year successfully advocated to empower our rural communities to have access to some incentive strategies, tax incentive strategies that have only been limited to core communities, urban environments, things like neighborhood enterprise zones, things like the Residential Facilities Exemption Act. And there are different ways that each community may or may not engage with those, but the point is that now all of our rural communities have access to those. They've really been untethered to some of the limitations that prevented us from being able to utilize those strategies in the past. So that was a big thing that Housing North took part in. And this year, they have sponsored and are collecting and distributing a housing needs assessment for the whole region. They will have breakdowns per county. And there are also some of our larger municipalities. Petoskey did participate in a more specific sort of assessment there as well. So we'll have updated numbers because a lot of what we're looking at statistically, anecdotally, we know what's going on and we feel the pressure and the demand, but statistically, we're using numbers from pre-COVID, and a lot of other sort of things contextually have contributed to some of our demand and our pressures right now. So we really need some new statistics there. Those are coming out in June of this year. So that'll be pretty significant as far as how our communities can determine their level of engagement and participation and willingness to move forward into this space, because they do actually have real numbers to go from. So it's really important part of Housing North's role. The Housing Ready program is obviously much more local. It's per county at this point, so one person per county, which is a full-time staff member devoted to each community's needs and priorities while sort of taking into account their unique advantages and challenges. I am focused on Emmett County. I've spent the majority of my life in Emmett County. I've lived all over Emmett County. And so my priority is to make sure that we're attending to the needs of each community as they define themselves. We know that this pressure for housing demand is area-wide, region-wide, statewide, national. But each of our communities can offer a role that looks a little bit different. And it's not for me or Housing North or anybody to go in and say, here's what you need to be doing. It's really sort of introducing these communities to some strategies, some options, and understanding how to help them move into that space. Because as we know, time and attention, and a big word in the nonprofit universe, capacity, something I bang my head against all day long, every day, from water and sewer capacity to actual staffing capacity. We know most of our small townships, communities, municipalities are all, our staff members are at capacity. So when you start introducing new initiatives or different incentives or a new, just different programs, it sort of feels overwhelming for a lot of our small towns. So a housing ready person can come into these places and offer some energy, some attention, some expertise, and some assistance. And so that's part of that shared capacity model. The Housing Ready from Housing North really works. And the shared funding aspect of that, as you know, your community, thankfully, thank you very much, contributes to that. But it's an important piece for an individual in this role to be contributed. My position is contributed from some of our larger funders like Fry Foundation, Rotary Charities, to some of our local funders like the Petoskey Harbor Springs Community Foundation, Harbor Springs, Petoskey, Resort Township. It's sort of spread so that I can work on behalf of these local stakeholders and organizations and not for any of them specifically. And as you know, a lot of the work that we need done and that we can do in our county isn't focused. For example, housing impact doesn't necessarily have to be within the city limits. So a lot of the work that I do outside of the city limits helps to support the businesses and the staffing and the economy of Harbor Springs, but doesn't necessarily have to squeeze right into the city limits of Harbor Springs. So working off of that model, I would love to sort of share with you some of the things that I have done over the past year. And I'm going to try to layer that in with sort of the larger understanding of my role. In the last 13, well, it's been a little longer than 13 months, but not much happens in March and April, especially when you break your foot. So in my first 13 months as Housing Ready Program Director, I attended 71 local government meetings, 40 local non-government organizations, formal meetings, 25 presentations. I gave 25 presentations, 4 major conferences, 3 local educational events hosted, and 3 significant grassroots initiatives catalyzed. So in a year, the idea of trying to be everywhere and trying to understand where the need is and also where the opportunities are for something that maybe should be taking place, or maybe our community or residents assume is taking place and isn't. That's the value of having one person and building relationships and understanding, the whole landscape of our area and figuring out where those holes can be filled. So that's been a huge part. There's obviously that's just a representation of time spent, but some exciting aspects of my job have to do at the local level, partially with the voting bodies and councils and planning commissions chiefly, but a lot of the work that I do is with staff. The majority of my time, for example, in Petoskey is spent with the planner and the city manager. I do present to council, we do have some of those conversations. The majority of my time in Mackinac City is spent with the zoning administrator, the planner in Mackinac City, planning commission and the president in the village of Helston, those kind of staff relationships that help me understand, gives me access to the community, at any time, so that I'm not limited to relating to that community once a month. In Mackinac City, for example, they're coming to the end of their RRC certification, which I know you guys are going through or have recently gone through, sort of identifying their priority sites, establishing their shared vision for those sites. That's something that the community has to do. But for me to be a part of that and then come into it at the end and say, okay, here, I see what you want. because you have established this vision, you're telling me what your community needs and wants. Let me go to my network of nonprofit developers, even some mission-driven for-profit developers, some of our philanthropic partners, and make sure we can create a project, a collaboration, we can layer it. None of it ever pencils out, financially speaking. So we're constantly trying to find more occasions to layer into that capital stack and make sure we're putting in programs and policies and incentives, but also nonprofit and even, you know, for-profit partners. For example, some of our large employers have started to engage in investment and donation for some developments around the area. And that's a huge factor as well. Something like committing to rental units over the course, say, you know, we'll take 10 units for the first 3 years on paper, can really establish something that the developer can leverage in real financial terms. And that can also impact that employer at the human resources level, but also the whole community. So these kind of collaborative opportunities are really important to keep engaging with, but they come from everywhere. So Emmett County has done a really great job in the past few years at the county level with attending to some of the zoning changes and working from residential zoning sort of reform. And they have pushed forward with a lot of the more straightforward tools that allow us to attend to housing demand. Things like allowing duplexes and triplexes and stuff on residential land, but also things like density increases in appropriate areas, not by a huge amount, but incrementally so that it's comfortable for the community, but it also adds to the viability of some of our projects. These things I'm seeing more sort of more tolerance or more interest in that at the community level too, which is really cool. I want to highlight how proud I am and how proud our region is of Emmett County specifically. We have really been at the forefront of trying to use these best practices and trying to engage in attending to our community, our year-round residential needs. And it is working. But what we have done over the past 15 months or so is taken all of the palatable bites out of the problem and identified the real big scary monsters. I call them barriers, I think would be probably the more technical term, which are things like water sewer capacity, things like infrastructure expansion, things that really require some intent and some planning and some uncomfortable discussions, but also require, you know, us to sort of circle back to, and I know that Harbor Springs is continually having this conversation of historical practices, you know, and our unique historical identity and being able to take advantage of that. These are good community design practices, and everyone, all of our small towns in our area are coming back to those, looking at what we have and how we can amplify that, because we don't want to keep spreading out. And not only do we not want to, it's almost financially impossible. And it's also irresponsible. You know, when we think about our conservancy, we think about our watershed, we think about things that just, you know, if we put in 2,500 units of single family residential of 3-bedroom homes on half an acre, first of all, there goes all our land, and there goes, you know, every single one needs a well and a septic system. That's not responsible either. So all of these things are sort of circling back to the fact that we have to have some of these larger, scarier conversations, and we have to deal with some things that perhaps haven't been attended to over the past few decades and really need to be thought about cooperatively with some intergovernmental collaboration. And the NLEA is doing a really great job initiating some of those conversations, the Harbor Springs Sewer Authority, City of Petoskey, for example, but also engaging the townships themselves, the neighboring townships, Bear Creek and Little Traverse and Resort Township, and really striving to communicate and work toward a more cohesive plan which is, it's best for all of us, sort of bonkers for us to do it piecemeal all the way around, one development at a time. But it also sort of dials back our ability to really produce more development quickly. So what we have right now in the pipeline is fantastic. We have a few larger rental, sort of multifamily neighborhoods going in. The Maple Block property is at the very early stages, but that should be about 200 units at the old Maple Block in Petoskey that goes through. They'll be hopefully breaking ground sometime this year, but obviously that takes a few years. The lofts at Lumber Square, also walkable to the city of Petoskey, that's 60 units. That's a really cool collaboration with the state, the Community Foundation, Han Development Company from Harbor Springs. A lot of help has gone into that to make those 60 units work and remain affordable. In Maple River Township, there's a really cool neighborhood that is taking advantage of that county zoning that made duplexes and accessory dwelling units allowable on every residential lot. And so an old neighborhood, it had been parceled out but never developed, that had 13 lots, is now able to hold 39 dwelling units, small, long-term rentals in Maple River Township, which is a super cool project. In the village of Pelston, they are working on their master plan right now. They're engaged sort of in the process of researching whether or not to start their RRC certification, working on a sub-area master plan for some residential development that integrates their trails and green space and conservancy land, which would be really cool. Like I said, Mackinac City has their priority sites, and we're teeing up some of our nonprofit partners to put in hopefully up to 20 homes right outside of the school on some city-owned land, which is a great and significant opportunity. Anytime a township or municipality or the county land bank holds land, to take the time and take it out of that sort of speculative market for a while, to hold that land and give us time to create a collaborative project so that we can make sure that it is exactly what the community wants and the community can identify as a development partner. It's a really important opportunity for us to take advantage of. So these are all, Resort Township is overhauling their master plan, sort of not just reattending to it, but similar to what the Planning Commission here is doing, is really taking a good look at all of the policies and taking a good look at the priorities of the community. And so I would like to say that to get to the point where the past few years with the community outreach and the work that the Little Traverse Bay Housing Partnership has done has really prepared our community, sort of changed the hearts and minds so that we were able to step into this space. We have gotten to the point where we have enough in the pipeline right now where we almost have to pause so we can take a look at some of our bigger issues, some of our traffic, for example, traffic and intersection issues and things like that, make sure that we are taking our best steps forward and not being reactive to the development and letting the private sector sort of dictate what's happening. It's a different space for our townships and our municipalities up here. We haven't had to engage in development sort of proactively, but it's important for us to do that. And I think we have, in Emmett County, I have seen all of the communities really sort of, I want to say bravely, but really anxiously attend to this need and figure out what makes sense for them. And I have been able to help a number of them, and I'm very excited for the work that we've done. And I'm very excited for the work that we'll continue to do, because this will be the part that really matters to the generations. When we come up with a plan, when we work together, when we start to see ourselves, collectively moving into this, and how each area, the progress impacts everywhere else. That's when we start to do really cool things. So if you have any questions for me, I would love to. One more, there's two programs I want to talk about that are pretty cool. Some of the grassroots, sort of not development related things I've been working on. One is a collaboration with Career Trades Education and Preston Feather. Career Trades has done a really great job creating sort of through lines and opportunities with development companies, Birchwood Construction, things like that. But Preston Feather is actually cultivating a training module that will be accredited, and then a further sort of professional development phase for after graduation that will be professional certification right out of school for a variety, not just the building trades, but almost all of them, because they have access to design technology and accounting and marketing and all kinds of things. So there's a wide variety of career skilled trades and careers that can affect. So we've been developing that program. I'm super excited for that to come to fruition. And the other one is a community capital club, kind of, within the city of Petoskey, but basically it's a bunch of private citizens that have come together and really wanting to create the framework so that we can personally invest in businesses, real estate, or, you know, investment opportunities within the city that are consistent with priorities like rental housing preservation and things like that. So really going beyond just the banks and the nonprofits and sort of that level of investment and bringing it down to the individual level, being able to say, hey, how can we vote with our dollars? How can we participate where we want it to go? And that is in its infancy, but is definitely a national movement as well. So we have some national guidance for that, and Petoskey potentially can be one of the flagship communities for that program as well. So there's a lot of things going on. It doesn't all happen at city council and government level, but it is all affecting that. And I definitely depend, and the staff that I work with is depending on these voting bodies like yourselves to be considering it and moving forward into these first best steps, thinking that we can really, really impact how we grow and who we welcome in. And that's sort of a big part of thinking about how our communities can open up to our young people, our older people that are transitioning. And one of the priorities that I always like to touch on is, you know, I don't focus on, or we as Housing North don't necessarily focus on affordability specifically. You know, we focus on variety and different kinds of dwelling units, give all of our residents choices to meet their needs, because not, you know, a single family house doesn't meet everybody's needs throughout the course of their life. And that's something that you'll hear me constantly beating the drum about. To me, it's not the price tag at the end, you know, it's where it is, what it looks like, how much accessibility can we build into our communities so that everybody has a choice to get something that they can afford, but also that meets their needs. So we're seeing a lack of transition, right? There's nowhere to go, so everybody stays where they are. And so the more we have, the more options we create, the more everybody can sort of move around a little bit. One more that I'm super excited about. One more. Is the MEDC, the Michigan Economic Development Corporation, has not, at least in the last 10 years, but my understanding is ever, done any projects in City of Petoskey, despite the fact that they have been redevelopment ready for a number of years. And we have successfully initiated 3 programs with the MEDC that will be breaking ground this summer. My pride is the 5 units above City Park Grill, which was unused office space. You know, anytime we have downtowns and anytime any of that downtown space is underutilized, we want to make sure we can do the best with it. And so creating 5 apartments above the City Park Grill is the rental rehab program through the MEDC that will be started. That's breaking ground this summer. And that is a super cool project. I'm really, really excited about that one too. So anyway, questions if you have time. I don't know. I ran out, but
Questions? No, it's a lot. Yeah.
Is there a website, a portal, a Facebook page where, I mean, you've covered all this, this is a great description, but behind it, there's a lot of data, I imagine. Is there a resource to look into it more deeply?
Yes, I will say the Little Traverse Bay Housing Partnership has a website that we worked with. I worked this year with the Leadership Little Traverse Group. And they took housing on as their initiative this year. They worked with Habitat for Humanity and their Windows of Opportunity, but they also upgraded the Housing Partnership's website. And the Little Traverse Bay Housing Partnership has a website and also puts out a newsletter every 2 months or so, every 2 or 3 months. And also puts together some educational opportunities and some outreach. We will be doing a hot topics at Crooked Tree Art Center in June 12th. That's free to attend. There'll be sort of a larger housing update. Yeah, Housing North website is very good, but it's again regional. So for what's going on around here in Emmett County, I would say Little Traverse Bay Housing Partnership and their newsletters and the chambers, the local chambers are all linked into that as well.
And this club that you were talking about, where individuals can look at an opportunity to invest, what's the motivation for investment? Is it return on investment? Is it altruism?
It's both. It's sort of based on the model of, yes, it would be return on investment, maybe for a more modest amount than they might get in the
That was
in the
my
open market.
implication, because that's what drives costs up.
Right,
You set the bar for an investment and that drives the cost up.
right.
So
So,
the expectation would be lower.
yeah, the expectation would be lower. The expectation would be mission driven
Okay,
and
mission driven, that's a
yeah.
good way to look at
And
it.
it definitely, at this point, is not able to be the only source of financing. Obviously, like gets layered into the capital stack.
But it's a
Common
start.
Grounds
To start, yeah.
in Traverse City used this model and worked with National Coalition for Community Capital and sort of set up that framework so that they could take in investment and also return that money. So it's not just grant or philanthropic donation.
One more question.
Yeah.
See, I just choked myself out of my thought. The educational program for Preston Feather, that's pretty exciting. That kind of a focus on the trades, because everybody's trying to hire the trades.
Yeah.
Is that an independent effort or is that through the local college? How is that being structured?
That just started with a conversation with Hannah Sanderson and Tori Thrush at the Charm Career Trades and Kirk Jabara and
Okay.
Rachel Huntman at Rachel at Preston Feather, because of their regional role, they're sort of all over in our 10 counties as well. It offers them the ability to sort of attend on a wider scale to this, but also they feel the impact of it too. So it's, yeah, we just started talking about it last year and have slowly sort of streamlined it into a few.
It's an exciting opportunity,
Capsules
really.
that-
And if anyone is sensitive to the shortfall, it would be Preston Feather. They see it everywhere.
Yes,
Thank you.
yes.
All right, we get a question in the audience.
Will you open it to comments?
Absolutely.
All right. Bill Mulder, Summit Street, and also Chair of the Planning Commission. I wanted to share my observations about this position that we funded and the value that we've gotten here in the city. And I think we've gotten good value for it. It's only about 13 months old, and yet Andrea was very active and consulting with us as we were reviewing the master plan and also as we're launching the complete review of the zoning code. And she's been so generous to share observations from other places. She'll say, oh, you ought to talk to Bear Creek Township. They just did such and such. It saved us time, given us some new ideas. She's with the county commissioners, she's with county administrations, with county zoning, and there's a lot of commonality there. We've been able to take advantage of some work that those other groups have done, and they saved us time. And then I've seen her work at a strategic level, and talking about the need for housing and talking about, macro solutions and some of the stuff that She ran by us tonight, which was hard to absorb. And I've also seen her work at a strategic or a tactical level. So on a project level basis, she's actually involved in each of those projects that you mentioned in Petoskey on a hands-on basis. And, as she runs through the litany of the great projects going on in the Petoskey area, we say to ourselves, well, we don't see anything. There's no apartments being built in the city of Turtle Springs. So, is this really a good value? Well, it is. This is a regional problem. And every good work that goes on in some neighboring municipality benefits us. So I think it really is a good investment. We're going to be asked probably to re-up at some point in time for the future. And from the planning commission's point of view and as a resident, I think we've gotten good value.
Thanks, Bill.
Okay, well, great
Thank you.
presentation.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. It's nice to know the program is working.
Lots going on. Lots going on.
Yeah, I'm familiar with a lot of the projects and I didn't realize, you were behind a lot of that stuff. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I won't take credit for them, but I will say that, yeah,
But
there's
that's part
an
of it.
element of that consulting, and trying to help when developers call and ask, they'll call me. And I'll try to match them up with the community based on what they're offering, what they're interested in and what the opportunity is. I'm not here to shoehorn high density development somewhere where nobody wants it, right? Like that doesn't feel like a win for anybody. And that's not how I want to live around here. So yeah, that's part of the fun. It's like a Rubik's Cube.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Piggybacking off that, item 3B is there is the Michigan Department of Agriculture and Rural Development called MDARD for short, is they have a rural readiness grant funding opportunity that the grant award could be for up to $50,000. And the grant is for addressing local needs. And these local needs can be a variety of needs. Here they listed housing, broadband, energy, transportation, health, infrastructure, et cetera. We've expressed an interest in many of these local needs, but there's one area for which we are already collaborating with other entities. So this grant award focuses on collaboration with regional entities. And so this position that we have, that we fund the housing director and actually the Housing North's Housing Ready program, we've committed for 2022 and 2023 for $10,000 a year. But this program meets this, in my opinion, meets this grant's guidelines pretty much perfectly. I'm not sure if we'd get it, but it meets the criteria for the grant. And my idea here was that since we're already collaborating by funding this program with Petoskey, Resort Township, Emmett County, and other foundations and private groups, that we would, if council's desire was to continue funding this, that we could apply for this grant. This grant, of course, if we get this grant, that would, pay for 80% of the cost of whatever. If we ask for, let's say, 3 years going forward at $10,000 a year, we could, get 80% of that cost, hopefully. So the idea was for me is to submit a letter of intent to apply for this grant and then apply for this grant. And if we get the award, this is why I'm coming to council for approval. If we get the award, then we would commit to the next 3 years using this grant money as well as the other 20% matching it from ourselves to fund this program. However, if we didn't get the award, then we would discuss our ability to continue participating in the program in the future during budgeting season. Obviously, it would make our decision a lot much easier if we had the grant funding available. So I talked with Lucas and actually we sat down with Andy to look at infrastructure projects that we might work on, but there was just something that fit that small $50,000 grant award. We look at our sewer, but the sewer authority is working on trying to expand capacity already as it is with our sewer authority, and mayor's on there, so he knows a little bit about kind of what we're trying to do there. So that didn't seem like a good fit. And of course, we do have an interest, in placemaking, in infrastructure, economic development, but this is the housing is something we already are collaborating with people. And if council's intent is to continue funding this, at least we could try going for this grant and hopefully get this funded for the next few years. So that's my suggestion is a recap is we apply for this grant. If we get it, then we would have 80% of the funds to go forward for 3 years. If we don't get it, then we come back together during budgeting season to see what's feasible and what council wants at that time.
Well, it's a great opportunity.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree.
Send them the paperwork.
Public comment.
Oh, yeah, public comment. Any public comment?
I don't see a downside.
Man? All they can do is say no.
So you need a motion.
A motion to apply for the grant.
I would make a motion that the city manager apply for the grant.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Wait, anyone opposed? No. Okay. All right. Moving on to item 3C, which is another grant opportunity. Right here. Okay, so this is the MEDC grant, Michigan Economic Development Corporation. Through our involvement in the Redevelopment Ready Communities Program, we are eligible to get funding, grant funding for our zoning code update. Of course, the zoning code update is something that the Planning Commission and Council talked about doing after we updated our master plan. So it took about 2 years or so, give or take, for the Planning Commission to update that master plan. And now we're into updating our zoning code, organizing it, and just making sure it matches and jives with our master plan goals and objectives. We, of course, consult with Beckett and Rader, and the MEDC grant requires us to have a consultant to do this, and their fees would go to that consultant. So it's not going to be going to zoning administrator or city manager's time, it would be going to the consultant's fees. And since we already have Beckett and Rader as a consultant, and they were going to do our zoning code update, we were made aware of this grant opportunity that could fund 75% of our fees. And so in that case, Beckett and Rader did an estimate of, or a breakdown of the cost update of zoning code would cost them, or cost the city $33,000 about. So the grant award is for 75%, which is about $25,000. So we have been awarded the grant. What council needs to do is accept the grant, if that's so inclined. I reviewed the contract. There are no stipulations that would be harmful to the city. The worst comes to worst is we just don't get the money for the project if we don't. There's certain benchmarks you have to prove. One is you have to show that you have a contract with a consultant and you've had a meeting with so then you get 25%. Then you have to show that, you've updated your zoning code and then, you deliver on that. And then there's another benchmark. So there's like 3 or 4 benchmarks and you get paid. So as long as you meet those benchmarks, you get the money. If you don't meet one of the benchmarks, then you don't get that money. I think we can meet the benchmarks. They're pretty reasonable. They're not anything out of the ordinary. So if council is so inclined.
And the money is paid directly to the consultant, so they're going to,
No, the money, we are awarded the
the
grant.
money comes through you, but it has to go back.
Yeah, we pay, but it's to cover their fees.
Understood.
Yeah, sorry, but we have to use a consultant. I can't use to pay my salary or staff salary.
Any public comment?
Bill Mulder again, West Summit Street, Planning Commission. Planning Commission is very pleased with the work that Beckett and Rader is doing for us, and they've been just fantastic. So it's really fortunate we have them engaged already. This is money we were going to spend with them anyway, and it was, again, like all upside to me. I'll turn it over to Rick. Any thoughts on?
No, it's a great project, and without the consulting we're getting, we'd be at a loss. I mean, every month we meet on it, sometimes twice a month. Now we have a subcommittee that's meeting once a month, and they're there and they're helping to answer our questions. It's a great buy. And if we can get somebody else to pay for it, it's perfect.
Yeah, what he said.
Take the money.
Yeah.
Is this part of is this a benefit from your RRC?
Yes, we could
Certification.
not get this grant money without
Yeah.
participating in our RRC.
Right.
Well, Just to be clear, there's no strings attached, there's no conditions other than we meet milestones that we would meet anyway
Yes.
to complete the program.
Need a motion.
Yes, we need a motion to accept the grant agreement.
I'll make the motion to accept.
I'll second.
Motion by Kurtz, second by Milky. You're all in favor?
Aye. Opposed?
Motion passes. All right,
Okay.
thank you. We will move on to item 3D, which is the Indian Town Park construction trailer request. So, as you know, and on Second Street, the tribe is building or developing a parcel of land for several housing units. And I was approached by their, I believe their contractor, Kurt is here. Yep, Kurt is here with
Greenfire.
Greenfire, okay, sorry, Greenfire, and basically, they had asked me to park their construction trailer on city property, which, in Indian Town Park, which is just east of the development site. And the city code allows me to temporarily permit the storage of construction materials or block streets or public property on a temporary basis, but not through the summer months. So what I said was, I can give them temporary approval. That's not a park that's used. It's very lightly used. It's, you know, we created a policy just for Pennsylvania Avenue Park because we get so many requests for that park. It's a highly used park, and it's highly used during the summertime by boaters and parking their trailers and their cars there. So, and we use it to store snow in the wintertime. So it's just a more highly used piece of property. Indian Town Park is, you know, there's some basketball nets there and some land. It's not used much at all. And it's one of those sites that, you know, it's on the Parks Board and the Park Department plan to look at in the future, but it's just, you know, not really heavily used. So we have as much of an issue of temporarily allowing this. But since the city code doesn't allow me to approve it for more than 90 days or for during the summer months, which run in our city code are June 15th through Labor Day weekend, I told Kurt that he has to come to city council to make that ask. I don't think that we should set a precedent of just allowing these kinds of activities on, you know, allowing construction companies and contractors to just start storing things on public property. You know, we want to make sure that we're not allowing this on a frequent or regular basis, and we should be looking at these on, aside from Pennsylvania Avenue, which we parking lot, which we created a policy for. I think, you know, these are so infrequent, we can look at them at a case-by-case scenario. And of course, as city manager, you know, and Chief Knight and Lucas and I will sit down if we get requests to block a sidewalk or block a street when there's projects going on. They're usually not for this long. I think this project is anticipated to last until December. So that is a long period of time. We're talking about, you know, over 6 months. So my idea was, you know, council, you know, my recommendation is that, you know, council could look at allowing it, but I think we should also explore if there are any other reasonable alternatives once the, you know, excavation is done and the utilities are in, if it can be relocated back on that site during any time in the construction process or somewhere else, as long as it's a reasonable alternative. I have no concern about this interfering with the public's use of this park because they just don't use it much, but I still think we want to make sure we're setting the right kind of precedent here by not just allowing it if there's reasonable alternatives available to the contractor. So Kurt is here, and if you want to just, you know, give a little more explanation about what you're doing and, you know, any other options and why those options might be not as good as using the city property right next to the development project.
So what we're doing is we're building, there'll be 3 buildings going on approximately 1.25 acres. You look up there at the map there. Structure A and structure B are virtually identical. There are 3 apartments per building. These are all going to be elderly, 55 and over apartments, 0-step, things like that. Off to the left-hand side is 2 townhomes. That's in the brownish color there, structure C. And then they are working on a grant right now just to the south of that to add 2 more townhomes. As you can see, the site is not very big for what we have going on. The trailer, do you have that up with where the trailer is? Oh,
This
there it
red
is.
right here.
So that's depicting where I have the trailer set right now on the city property. There is, I'm really limited. There's not much place else I can go with it. On the far south end of the property, we could dig out the hill and possibly put it there. The problem I would have is after all of our construction is done, is how would I get the trailer out of there? Basically, it's a 40-foot trailer, 10-foot wide by 40 feet. So we'd be trying to maneuver it around to get it out, I guess.
What's your idea for parking?
For during construction,
Yeah,
we'll have on the, can I step up there?
Yeah, definitely.
We'll basically be using, I like layers. There we go. So we have up on, across the top here and on the bottom here, our underground storage tanks for all of our drainage. For our entire site, it's self-contained. So what's gonna end up happening is we're gonna try and get all of our construction done on these buildings as far as footings, foundation walls, things like that. And then move into doing these underground tanks. When these tanks are completed, we'll be using this as parking. In the meantime, I mean, obviously we can't do both tanks at the same time. So either parking will be on this side when this tank is going or vice versa.
obviously I'm familiar with everything going on here. I think the trailer's okay. I just don't want to see the park becoming a parking lot.
No, no.
That would be the only
No,
concern.
the only thing that we'll have there will be my job trailer. There'd be no parking on city lot. We'll have to probably park on the road at times, because there will be cranes, things like that coming in, lifting walls. These are all prefab buildings.
But I mean, where he's got the trailer sitting, drive by it half a dozen times, it's fine for
Yeah,
what.
and they know that they would have to, if any damage or anything, restore the property back to its condition, so.
A little black dirt and some seed. It's,
Yeah.
I mean,
And we have to go behind the curb anyway, once all the curb goes in.
right.
So,
Yeah, I don't see a problem with what they're asking.
I went down today again, just to see, and could see the lot lines and stuff, and it's snugged up as much as it can be to their property.
It's not gonna
I
get-
don't see a problem with it. There's plenty of room in the park if somebody wants to play ball game or something.
Right.
It's not gonna interfere with anything.
Yeah,
I feel like it kind of puts a barrier too, so that there's not people going from the park to the construction site.
I think it's fine. I do think if they could move it, I don't know if it's gonna be possible or not, depending on how, that would be great, but I don't really have a problem with it there.
I agree with doing these reviews. Council should
Yeah.
review them on a case by case, but I don't see a problem with this request.
Down there, I don't see, no. And there really isn't any place else in that area to put it, where it wouldn't be more in the way, for sure. So I think it's okay. If they can come up with a way to get it over on their property, that'd be great, but if they can't, I think it's all right.
So what I would need is, unless there's public comment, is a motion just to approve it, to go through, the project is supposed to end in December, allow it to be
December
started.
31st is our actual end date.
Okay, and then to allow it to remain there to the end of the year, but if there's something more reasonable or offsite, an opportunity pops up, then explore that one.
I'll make that motion just as long as we keep in mind
And
the,
no parking.
no parking on the,
Cars on.
on the park side. But
Any public, good.
Yeah, so is there any public comment?
Just, are you the contact person, like if we have cars in the street parked or whoever I need to get a hold of, I can anticipate problems when people come on drive.
Sure.
Or or whoever it is, if you could just forward it on Victor.
If I can give you, I have my business cards, I
Okay.
can hand them out too.
All right.
I just gotta grab them out of my truck.
Oh,
This isn't the first construction project on that road.
Doing a couple of them down around the corner.
All right, so we have a motion by John Cups. Is there a second? By Leo. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so before we go to closed session, I'll go through the city manager's report. And then should be brief. There, let me just get the screen back up. Police department has narrowed down, so Chief Knight, if you want to talk about it, but to one candidate for the Marine Enforcement Officer positions that have been offered.
No, I'm still in the process. We had 3 people apply. One took a job with the county, the other person had no voting experience. And so actually, we were blessed to have somebody, retired firefighter from Livonia, lives up on Washington Street, owned a house up there since 2012. 54 years old, has driven a boat several times, and so I'm just in the process of doing his background check. He will hopefully be our additional Marine Patrol officer.
Nice.
That's good news. The city has received a $75,000 donation from the Highlands, formerly Boeing Highlands, from its chairlift auction, which was much more money than we anticipated. Those proceeds are being donated toward the skate park, so we're well above $350,000 in that skate park project, anticipating to break ground in September, October. So we should have a new skate park.
That's great.
The boardwalk construction project is on pace to be completed by the 4th of July, weather permitting. The lumber expert has been out there price has been out there putting the lumber in. I don't know, John, if you have anything more to say about that. But
Yeah, everything's going pretty well. They've got their system down. They're down to the intersection now, so they're gonna be heading further downhill the next couple of weeks. So all the railing material is ordered, so as long as that stuff comes in on time, we should be on pace to have it done by the end of June, so.
As a reminder, joint economic development meeting between council, planning commission, DDA and chamber, May 22nd, 6 p.m. at Holy Childhood Community Center. It's calling a meeting just for Open Meetings Act compliance purposes, but it's really gonna be more like a forum, a discussion between the board members as well as anyone from the public who's interested in attending. So there's a few topics. Bill Mulder, the planning chair, will be our moderator for that. And I did meet with him and explained to him his duties, so he knows what to do now. Arbor Fest is on Saturday, May 27th at Kiwanis Park from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. So got some things coming up for the public to attend. We'd like to see you there. Should be fun events. Oh, and I should mention at both events, the joint meeting and the Arbor Day Fest, there will be food. So that's going to motivate anyone to come. Pizza at the meeting and hot dogs at Arbor Day Fest. That's your pleasure. Statistics and recap of some of our meetings. The Planning Commission approved the special land use application on May 3rd. That meeting had been rescheduled several times because we didn't have a quorum to actually approve the special land use. So that meeting finally happened. The DDA reviewed and discussed the TIF capture, Merchants Walkway and 3rd Street lighting. Harbor Commission reviewed commercial licenses, heard an update about blessing the fleet, and discussed creating a unloading zone for stand-up paddleboards and kayaks at Ford Park. On the next Harbor Commission agenda, they're putting on the agenda to actually start looking at redesign of Ford Park for the circulation and parking and loading and unloading. That's something that's been on our CIP and something that's been discussed for a while. Hopefully, once we get the Harbor Master building renovations complete, then we can move on to that project.
But the idea was the discussion.
The discussion started, right, yeah, but the finance. Harbor Master building. And then at the RRC meeting on Friday, we discussed the development of a marketing plan. So it's not some long, complex, convoluted 30-page plan. It's going to be, 5-6 pages, but it's a marketing plan. Managers meeting events of note. As you see, 3 of my meetings were all related to NDPA subcommittee meetings essentially, and 1 meeting about emergency operations. So these MISO emergency operations, just for some general feedback, is if there's an emergency, let's say there's a, it's a really hot week, or they expect some problems with the load, each municipality or each electric department has to basically shed some load. That means, not use as much electricity. So we have emergency plans in place. So how do we go about doing that? So something that we get tested on regularly, and something that was not clear, and now it's more clear to us, electric department, and cities, about how to go about doing that. And then we did have a site visit with the county officials for the bike path easement on Bay Bluffs property. And it's a very, very small easement that just borders the skate park and Bay Bluffs property. And the county seems okay with granting that easement. So we're drafting up that easement language. So we hopefully then can kick off fundraising for that bike path eventually, with the help of Harbor Inc., Harbor Way, I should say, of Harbor Inc. So that's all I had, unless there are any questions.
So one addition, on May 24th is planting day in Harbor Springs. Garden club's doing their stuff, and the DDA is doing the flower beds, and the Parks Commission is doing Marina Park. So if you aren't on one of those committees or crews, come down and help somebody. Got a lot of flowers to put in.
If there's nothing else, we do have item E on our agenda, which is closed session to discuss TIF capture, the county's portion, the TIF capture, and to discuss a legal opinion written by outside counsel.
Thank you.
And Jim will give that language.
So do we need to make that motion?
So we would need a motion to meet in closed session under section 8(1)(h) of Michigan Open Meetings Act to consider the written opinion of the city's special legal counsel as to the DDA's tax and human financing plan. That written opinion is exempt from disclosure under the Michigan Freedom of Information Act, section 13(1)(h), and therefore is an appropriate topic for discussion in a closed meeting. So we need a motion to meet in closed session on that.
I'll make that motion. We go into closed session.
Oops, motion, Rondell, second. I'll do a roll call for this one. Guerra,
Yes.
Melky,
Yes.
Trups,
Yes.
Leo,
Yes.
Rondell.
Yes.
We are now in closed session. I will